Hello, this is CT Woods Art. I'm a local artist here based in Virginia, and I'm going to create a series of videos for you, the new artists, trying to minimize the fear of painting with oil paints. I think from my experience, I've done acrylics, watercolor, and oils. Originally, I was a pencil drawer, and when I got into painting, which has been many years now, I found that the oil has by far been the easiest for me. And I'm going to try to debunk and basically um, try to show you viewers that the painting with oil is nothing like the horror stories that we most of the time hear about oil. I mean, I've met so many artists at the art supply houses where they have expressed their fear and all of the hang-ups with painting with oil. But from my experience, as far as the results and the finished product and the prestige of it and the longevity of the paint and how it looks, the sharpness of the colors and how the colors look so wet even when they're dry. It out to me, and this is just my own personal opinion. Um, there is no comparison as far as I'm concerned. Now, I'm not the artist that has been to college and got a degree in this, and that. I am a self-taught artist. I'm a portrait painter. My expertise is painting uh, humans, painting people. I'm a portrait artist. I dibble dabble in abstracts, and I also paint landscapes. Well, with that being said, I'm pretty fluent with portraits. But as far as I'm concerned, if you can paint one, you can definitely paint all the rest. It just takes a little bit of practice. You have to learn the basic techniques, and then once you get the foundation of how to paint certain paintings, you you can add your own style or ideas to it because, as Bob Ross always says, your world. So you pretty much can do what it is that you want to do as an artist. That's the thing that I like so much about being an artist is that it's what's in my head. And you find viewers and people who admire your work individually apart from any other artist. So that's the beautiful part of being an artist. Now, with that being said, I'm not going to talk and make this a long video. I just wanted to give a brief introduction to painting with oil. Right now, I'm in my studio and I am going to go try to make this video no longer than 10 minutes to 12 minutes so that it doesn't deter viewers from watching a long drawn out video. Now, there are going to be several videos in this series to where I'm going to be trying to break down the art of painting with oil paintings. I mean, with oil paints, excuse me. But it's not as hard as many people try to make out that it is. Now, without further ado, here we go. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically go over what it is that I use in my studio. This is basically my paint board. I have all of my paints here hung. I have the larger tubes, the smaller tubes of oil painting. Most of what I use is Winsor Newton. I have some Master Touch. These are some of the oil the oil paints that I had when I first started oil painting. I'll get into that later on in some further videos, the difference between the higher end paints and then the student grade paints. But there is a difference, and I'll get into that later on. Just keep up with me, and I'll try to explain that. And as far as painting goes, I try to have all of these paints within hand's reach where I can grab them and put them on my paint palette. Now, this may be a little elementary to some advanced painters, but for the one who are starting out, this is good information because I wished I could have ran across a video where someone actually spent time and explained to me the details of oil painting. Now, this device here, which you can pick up from Hobby Lobby or different paint stores, this is color matching, where you can actually put this on a particular picture if you're trying to copy or paint from a photograph or something. You want to match colors. This is a good way to get close to the colors. And then after you find the color that it matches, it gives you basically a name of the color when you run across it. Now, the way I set up is I sometimes stand and paint, and then sometimes I sit and paint. So I use a stool that swivels, and I use basically a H-frame easel. My advice to anybody who's painting a new beginner, always have your canvas straight in front of your face. Never paint with your canvas laying flat. It gives you a different perspective than the subject of what you're painting from. So I noticed when I painted with the canvas laying flat that it actually looked good when I was looking at it from that perspective. But then when I stood it up and looked at it, which is how most people are going to view the painting once you're done with it, it looked very distorted and out of proportion. And the way you painted it to where it looks in proportion from this angle, but when you stand it up, it's out of proportion based on how you're looking at it. Basically, you need to paint the picture or the image on your canvas the same way that you see it on the screen. And now, you don't have to do this, but I find it the easiest for me to use iPads. And you don't have to have iPads. You can use a Samsung tablet or whatever you have. You don't have to go out and break the bank. I'm an advanced artist, so I've been doing this for several years. So I've invested in my things that I use, and this is what works best for me. Now, so I use an iPad. I bought this stand from off of Amazon, and it holds the 13-inch. And I also got a stand that clips onto my easel, and it holds my 10-inch iPad. And I use two different iPads because I may want to draw in on this image and then look at this image from a distance. So it keeps me from having to keep going back and forth with this. So I use both of them to actually paint. And I basically go in and draw out the image and whatnot. And the first thing that I do is want to get rid of the white canvas. Now, to speed up the process, if you're trying to hurry up painting along, it's okay to paint with acrylics just to get the colors down on the canvas, but never paint all under acrylics. In other words, never paint oil first and then paint with acrylics afterwards. The idea of painting with oil is you always want to go fat over lean, meaning that you never want to use something that's very oily mixed with the oil paint over something that's more water-based or more what you would call lean, which would be more petroleum liquid based mediums mixed with the oil paint. So what would be considered fat would be something like linseed oil. What would be considered lean would be the actual Gamsol, which is odorless mineral spirits. So a few things that I want to debunk with painting with oil is that there's only a few of these paints that are really toxic, if any. Anything with cadmium in it, like this tube of paint here, like cadmium red, they claim that this is somewhat toxic. So really, when you're using this, try not to put any of the paint on your skin, or like put your hands in your mouth while using any of these paints, or spirits, or mediums. I don't I don't particularly wear rubber gloves. I just keep my hands out of my mouth, which I try to do that anyway. Most cases, that's one of the things that I've learned as I've gotten older. Just keep your hands out of your mouth. Period. It's just a lot of germs you ingest that you shouldn't. But anyway, titanium white, that's not as bad, but the zinc white, they say the zinc is toxic. So those are just a few of the paints that you kind of need to be careful of. But for overall, oil paint itself is not toxic. And really and truly, you can paint a painting without using any medium. It's just that when you use the paint straight out of the tube, it's very stiff, and it's hard to spread on the canvas, so you don't have that fluidy, smooth consistency with the paint. So you have to add a medium to it to make it flow better, and that is the key behind oil paint, where it differs from acrylics. Acrylics, you can take and squeeze the paint straight out of the tube, and you can paint with it and just spray a little water with it, and you're good to go. But with oil, you have to add a medium. You don't have to, but if you want it to be smooth and to flow, and you're not wear your arm out trying to press the paint into the tooth of the canvas, you want to add a little bit of medium. Now, with that being said, let's move to my palette. Now, for me, this is just for me. I use a glass palette. And what I did is I went by the local glass company, and I have them to cut me pieces of glass, different sizes, and I try to get them tempered so in case they break, they doesn't have any shards with them. But you don't have to. But make sure you get a thicker piece of glass, maybe a 1/4 inch if you can afford it. 3/8 is fine. It's going to be a bit heavy, but at least a 1/4 inch will be the best and the minimal that I would recommend. If you can, under the glass, paint it gray or brown, preferably a gray, because you don't want to have white underneath your glass, or any palette for that sort. You want it to be a gray color or some type of dark color, because what happens when you put it on a brown or a gray substrate, you can see the colors better. When you put something on a white surface, the white kind of gives you a false presentation of the color value of the paint that you're using. And what will happen when you put the painting under different lighting, it will appear different than what you actually see with the naked eye. Now, when you put the oil painting on the palette, make sure you don't squirt out a bunch of paint, because the oil goes a lot further than the acrylics. And if you're moving from acrylics to oil, you'll have this thing where you want to squirt out a bunch of paint onto the palette when you're using oil. Don't do that, because what will happen is that you'll end up wasting a bunch of paint. Now, I have a bunch of paintings that I'm going to do. So this is why you kind of see these big globs of paint, because I'm going to use them. And what I do is, once I get through with all the paint, I'll just take and use it to prime a canvas or wood. So I really don't waste any of this paint. And the beautiful part of using oil is that you have a huge window for drying. And I can leave this paint just like this and come back in the morning 12 hours later and just start painting where I left off. And this paint, some of it will have a slight skin on top of it. You just take the paintbrush and hit that little skin and pull it off. If it has any, sometimes it doesn't, and you can just continue to paint. And in many cases, some of you advanced oil painters, you know that once this paint sets and some of the mediums dry out of it, it even works better. You get a more stronger paint when you're trying to paint on your canvas and trying to cover up the canvas underneath. It even works better. So just this alone is incentive enough for me to use oil as my preferred choice of paint. Now, mediums. You don't have to get all deep into the medium as a beginner. You can paint your entire painting, and I've done this with Gamsol. Gamsol is a pure odorless mineral spirit. Now, don't if you're in the construction business or you've painted with oil paint on your walls and you use mineral spirits from Lowe's or Home Depot or some of the big box stores, don't go get that, because even though it says odorless, it's different from this here. The Gamsol has been refined much more than the odorless mineral spirits that they have at Lowe's. Don't use that. You can, it works just the same, but this here is supposed to be much more refined, and it doesn't give off the fumes that the mineral spirits that you get from Lowe's or any other big box stores will give off. Now, with that being said, you use Gamsol. What I normally do is I'll put it in a bottle like this, and I'll just squirt 2-3 little drops onto the paint, and I'll use my brush to mix it around and make a puddle, and the paint mixes with the Gamsol, and it helps it spread easier onto the canvas. Now, once you get your base coat down onto your canvas, you can skip to something that's a little bit more oilier. And what I normally use is this here, which in the bottle, it is what you call the dry and linseed oil. And this dries kind of fast. Sometimes if you don't watch, it'll dry overnight. That's called a drying linseed oil. And basically you just need a couple of drops to your paint, and it'll make it very fluidy where you can just paint with it, and you don't have to worry about doing anything else with adding medium to your painting. Now, this is called stand oil. This is similar to the linseed oil, but this stays wetter longer. It will make the paint slow down when it dries. So it's a preference of what it is that you want. Now, there's some stuff called Liquin that comes in a bottle. This, you take a dab of this and mix it with your paint, and this will cause your paint to dry very fast. It'll dry, most all the colors will dry overnight. Now, with that being said, when you mix linseed oil with your paint, never mix over 25% linseed oil, Liquin with your paint. So if you have a dab of paint this big and you want to mix Liquin with it, you want to look at the volume of this, and you only want to add 25% of Liquin with this little gob of paint. Now, I don't have a scale or any sort to measure it out. You just have to get familiar with it and basically separate this line of paint into 4 parts. When you separate it into 4 parts, you want to make sure that 25% is one of the 4 parts, and then you mix it all together, and that's your medium that you're adding to this gob of paint. Now, and you want to make sure you don't do that. And the reason for that is because if you put too much of any of these mediums into the paint, it will cause the paint to weaken, and it will compromise the bond of the paint to the canvas. And if you don't watch, the paint will flake off of the canvas once it dries. So you always want to make sure that you don't overdo it with your mediums. Now, the next thing, and some of the professional artists are going to rag me out, probably going to have something to say about it. But this, once again, is my experience. You see how many brushes I have? Brushes are one of those things where you can spend a bunch of money or you can spend very little money. I have tried both. I have bought cheap brushes where you get a pack of brushes for 12 bucks. And I have bought brushes where when you buy them, they are artist grade brushes where you get one brush for 20 bucks. And you can really dump some money in brushes. So my advice to any new artist is learn the techniques of painting and mixing the paint and putting the paint on the canvas. And this is where you need to spend your time, is trying to learn how to work these paints and get familiar with the oil paintings and how to mix these paints and use them to where you can see the benefit of using oil. Don't go out and spend a bunch of money on a bunch of brushes and stuff. It's just not necessary, because I'm going to be honest with you. All of these big brushes and all of these fancy brushes you see, I rarely use them. I mean, I really never use them. If you really want me to be honest with you, this right here, something this size here and smaller, on all the big paintings that I do, is mostly what I use. I mean, I very rarely use a big brush. I use a big brush, something like this. I'll use it maybe for 10 minutes just to put the paint on a wide area. But once I get this wide area completed and I start doing the details, I'll find myself gravitating towards the smaller brushes, because that's where you get most of your control. Now, other things that I probably want to tell you is I'm a big fan of the longer handle brushes. And you think that you have a lot of control when you put your hands here on the brush. But really and truly, the control comes when you come to the back of the brush. This is where the control comes at, and you can do a lot more with the brush when you grab it from here than it is to grab it from here. I don't know why, but for me, you get more control from here than you do from here. And standing up is the better option for painting. You have more control when you're standing up looking at the canvas. You just do. This is all from my experience. Now, just another FYI is that I have these containers and they have a wire in the bottom. And basically you have your mineral spirits, Gamsol, in this container. I have 2 of them. And this is what you use to clean your brushes. And this, when you're done, you put the lid on it, and when it sets overnight, all the heavies will go to the bottom. And when you come back tomorrow, 9 times out of 10, this liquid of odorless mineral spirits is going to be clear. And you can use this for as long as this does not stink and it continuously gets clear. Once it gets to the point where it does not clear anymore, then 9 times out of 10, you need to take the screen out and you need to clean this out. Never put it down your drain. You need to dispose of it properly. What I recommend is to put the sludge that's in the bottom into a jar and save it, because you can actually use it to prime a canvas. It's still paint. It's still good enough to basically paint onto your canvas, and it's going to be more than likely a gray color, or kind of a greenish gray color, and you can use it to prime your canvas especially if you do large paintings. So you don't really waste anything when it comes down to painting with oil. And for me, I'm one of those neat painters. You see, I don't have drop cloths and stuff down. I don't get paint all over everything, and that's just me. Now, for anyone who is starting out, make sure you have proper ventilation. I have a Dyson, and when I'm painting, I turn this on high, and it has a filter in it to where it will filter the air. And you want to make sure that you have a air purifier when you're painting with oil. You just need to have that. So invest in an air purifier and make sure that you have some type of ventilation, that you can be able to ventilate the paint and the fumes and all of that, because that's important. And you need to invest in a good palette knife. Now, there are so many different types of palette knives. There's this type of knife, and then there's all these other different types. My suggestion is to not limit yourself to just one type of knife. Use them all and see which one works best for you. And you'll find which one is comfortable and works best for you, and you adopt that. Also, make sure you have plenty of lighting. You want to make sure that you got plenty of lighting, that you can light up your canvas and you'll be able to see, and you can have plenty of visual light to where you can see all your shadows and see exactly what you've done. I'm going to cut this video off right here. There's so much more that I can tell you. I will tell you in the next video. So if you are not subscribed to my channel, please subscribe. I'm going to be doing a series of videos on the beginnings of painting with oils with C.T. Woods Art. And my words to you is that we're creating one painting at a time to change the world and to light up the world. Be blessed and stay tuned for further videos from C.T. Woods Art. Have a good day.